How could you lie to me, James? I'm not. There isn't much left on the card. Maybe 100 million. James had a frustrated look. Was it his fault that he had money? Thea snatched the card in his hands and grunted coldly, I'm curious to see how much there is in this card. Saying that, she headed to a nearby ATM. She inserted the card. Password. She turned to look at James, who followed close behind. James replied, 6 8s. Thea keyed in the password. Upon seeing the number on the screen, she snickered. Then, wearing a grim expression, she reproached James, the balance is 0. How dare you lie to me? James scratched his nose. The balance was indeed 0. However, it was capable of withdrawing $100 million. Besides, he did not have to pay them back. Ads by Pub Future. The financial department of the country would help him pay for everything. Thea pulled out the card and returned it to James. Although the balance was 0, Thea was still delighted. That was because the money was obtained through illegal means. She believed it was in James' nature to boast about being wealthy. Well, at least he only bragged and did not acquire the money illegally. The two headed to the North Kensington branch of Herbal Biotech. Herbal Biotech was the largest pharmacy in Kensington and was established by the famous Drive. Jay Fallon. It was renowned not only in Kensington but all across the country. This, of course, included North Kensington. The auction held by Herbal Biotech targeted the wealthy. That was because the herbs sold were valuable and priceless. Though these precious herbs were considered by many to be nothing out of the ordinary, they were lifesavers for the rich who were gravely ill. Soon, they arrived at the place. The shop was closed today for the auction. To make the auction a resounding success, Drive. Jay Fallon had brought many precious herbs including the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng from the headquarters. Thea Callahan. A voice came. Thea turned and saw a beautiful woman and a handsome man heading toward her. Huh. Thea stared at the woman. She felt a sense of familiarity. However, nothing came to her mind. Why you are? Thea, it's me. I'm Juliana Jaccaruso. Juliana. Thea was astonished. Juliana Jaccaruso was one of her best friends in senior high school. Her relationship with Juliana was the same as Quincy's. They were once the closest of friends. Juliana said smilingly, I heard from Quincy in the group chat that you've restored your looks. She even posted a picture of you. I couldn't recognize you when I saw you just now. I was only sure it was you after double-checking with the photo. Thea smiled. Juliana pulled the handsome man by her side and introduced him, this is my boyfriend. He's Key, from the Xenos. Hello. Thea held out her hand. Key looked at Thea in a daze. He did not loosen his grip even after shaking her hands. Thea broke free from his grip and forced an awkward smile. Then, she pulled at James and introduced him, this is my husband, James Caden. What? He's James, Juliana exclaimed. It was as if she had seen a peculiar object. I heard from Quincy that he's the useless son-in-law of the Callahans. Not only has he been leeching off the family, but he also doesn't work and has no ambition. Just like Quincy, Juliana looked down on James and belittled him non-stop upon meeting him. James smiled faintly. Thea shot him a look of resentment. As the saying went, bad news travels fast. James' reputation for being trash had already spread to North Kensington. She smiled awkwardly and said, Juliana, James isn't completely useless. He just likes keeping a low profile. He practices medicine, and it was he who treated my injuries. His medical skills even far exceed that of Dr. Fallon of Kensington. She could only say this at that moment. Although James had said he did not know much about medicine, she did not wish to embarrass herself in front of her former best friend, so she tried her best to explain. Juliana only looked at James upon hearing this. However, she still did not hold him in high regard. After all, many practice medicine in Kensington. It would be strange if someone from the area did not know a thing or two about it. She did not take Thea's words seriously. After all, if James was truly more capable than Drive Fallon, he would be world-renowned instead of being ridiculed for being a good-for-nothing by the public. By the way, are you here to participate in the auction organized by Herbal Biotech? Juliana changed the subject. Ads by Pub Future. Yes. Thea nodded and said, it's my grandmother's birthday. I'm planning to get her wild ginseng. Immediately, he stepped forward with a bright smile. Leave everything to me, Ems. Tia, I have a good relationship with the person in charge of herbal biotech of the North Kensington branch. I'll request him to keep one for you. Thank you so much. It's nothing. Since you're Juliana's friend, that makes you my friend too. No one dares say no to the Zenos in North Kensington. He started boasting about the Zenos' power and influence in North Kensington. James smiled and said nothing. After chit-chatting for a while, they entered Herbal Biotech. Herbal Biotech was spacious on the inside. As it was not yet night time, the auction had not yet begun. However, many precious herbs were on display. Many of them were auction items of the evening that were unveiled for a sneak peek so that the public would know their values and prices. James and Thea looked around casually. Soon, it was evening. Many affluent people of North Kensington were present on the topmost floor of Herbal Biotech. The auction would be held on schedule. Many influential families in North Kensington gathered here. Some among them had come from other parts of the country and were here to purchase herbs that could extend their lifespan. A glamorous woman in a white dress with an attractive figure walked up to the auction block. Wow, it's Christine Fallon. That's Christine Fallon, the granddaughter of Dr. Fallon. I didn't expect her to be the host for this auction. Rumors say that her medical skills have exceeded that of her grandfather. She's already called the female Asclepius of Kensington. The woman in the white dress walked up to the auction block. Immediately, the crowd cheered. Holding the mic, Christine looked at the crowd and said with a smile, "Welcome to the auction organized by Herbal Biotech. Many valuable herbs will be auctioned here today. Without further ado, we'll begin with our first item of the day, the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng." The crowd fell silent instantly. It was not a secret that Herbal Biotech had a king of ginseng in its possession. The ginseng was renowned in both Kensington and North Kensington. However, due to its exorbitant price, no one had been capable of purchasing it. As Christine spoke, two ladies with attractive figures walked up the stage with a luxurious-looking box. It was red and about a meter long. Christine opened the box. Inside was a human-shaped ginseng a meter in length. Wow, is this the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng? I can even smell its fragrance from here. Legend has it that it has an extremely high medical value and can be used to cure all illnesses by combining it with other high-quality herbs. The crowd was heated in their discussions. Upon seeing the ginseng, James had a satisfied look. Not bad. It's indeed 1,000 years old. I never expected to see such a precious herbal medicine in a bustling city like this. Though Thea did not know anything about medicine, she was nevertheless stunned upon seeing such huge ginseng. Christine spoke behind the auction block. "This 1,000-year-old king of ginseng was bought by my grandfather 8 years ago by a pleasant coincidence. Ever since then, it's been the signature treasure of our shop. I believe everyone here today has heard that its starting price is $100 million. Thus, the bid increment cannot be less than $1 million. Hearing this, the crowd gasped. Although these were affluent people, they were still shocked by the exorbitant price. $100 million was simply too much. They believed it was not worth it to spend $100 million on ginseng, even if it was the king of ginseng. Everyone. Ads by Pub Future. At that moment, an elderly man at the very front stood up. He looked around 60 years of age and wore a green scrub. He had long hair and was dressed old-fashionedly. He looked at the crowd and introduced himself. "I'm Bjorn Truman, and I'll have the king of ginseng. For my sake, please do not bid." "What? Bjorn Truman? He's Bjorn Truman," the crowd exclaimed. Puzzled, James looked at Thea and asked, "Honey, who's he?" Before Thea could speak, Juliana by her side shot James a look of disdain. "You don't even know Bjorn Truman. And yet you say you practice medicine." James scratched his nose. "Must one who practiced medicine know of Bjorn Truman?" Thea explained, "Honey, Bjorn Truman is renowned in the medical world. His reputation and prestige are comparable to Dr. Fallon's." "Oh." James' curiosity was piqued. "Tell me more about it." Thea explained, "The art of medicine has been around for 5,000 years. There had been many medical associations before J. Fallon established the Doctors' Association. Though the Doctors' Association established by J. Fallon has been acknowledged as the mainstream, many prideful doctors refused to join. So, they created an association of their own. Bjorn was one of them. He's nicknamed the Doctor of Wonders and is the representative of the non-affiliated school. James scratched his nose. He never expected that the world of medicine would be this complicated. Many of the filthy rich were here today for the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng. However, before the bidding had even started, Bjorn, the Doctor of Wonder, stood up and announced the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng was his. They knew of Bjorn. Not willing to offend a man with advanced medical skills, they gave up on the idea of bidding. However, James could not care less. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How could he miss it? Besides, presenting the king of ginseng as a gift would earn Thea respect among the hills. 101 million. James raised his bidding card. His voice reverberated across the venue. Hearing this, everyone fixed their gazes on James. They were looking forward to witnessing a spectacular scene. Bjorn had announced the king of ginseng as his. Who was this guy? How could he bid? Was he going against Bjorn? After Bjorn's announcement, no one dared make a bid. He wore a satisfied expression. Just then, a voice came. His face darkened upon seeing James making a bid. Seeing a young and unfamiliar face, he said coldly, "Hey, did you not hear that this king of ginseng's mine? What's the meaning of this? Are you going against me?" James could not care less about Bjorn. He needed the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng for Thea's sake. From the auction block, Christine's face darkened upon seeing Bjorn. She knew he was a troublesome man. Besides, his medical skills were not beneath her grandfather's. As Bjorn had announced the king of ginseng as his, she could not sell it at a good price. Then, she saw James make a bid. After, she saw Thea by his side. Christine froze. Was that not Thea Callahan? Although she was not sure of Thea's background, her grandfather had defended Thea during Una Lawson's birthday party. Faced against Bjorn's threat, James laughed. Since both of us want the king of ginseng, may the highest bidder win. After all, this is an auction. Thea pulled at James and whispered, "It's all right, honey. I don't want it anymore. Besides, we don't have the money." James lightly waved and gestured for Thea to be at ease. Meanwhile, Bjorn wore a surly expression, and his glare was icy cold. Ads by Pub Future. He had stepped forward and declared the king of ginseng as his so that he could obtain it at the lowest price. He did not expect a guy to pop out of nowhere and make a bid. HMPH. You think you are as rich as me? Not to be outdone, he called out, 110 million. Saying that, he glanced at James. James raised his bidding card again, 150 million. Gasp. The crowd gasped. What kind of bid increment was this? 150 million from 110. Who was this guy? Why have they not seen him before? He was an unfamiliar face. Could this be a rich kid from a renowned family? However, his attire did not give off the impression of a wealthy guy. They were astonished. Meanwhile, Bjorn was enraged. He desperately needed the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng. The annual medical competition in Kensington was just around the corner. He had been preparing for many years to obtain the title of Asclepius and become famous overnight. He had successfully created a formula that needed the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng as the efficacy-enhancing ingredient. 200 million. Bjorn roared with rage. His roar reverberated across the auction house. Everyone knew he was enraged. They knew he was a vengeful man. Now that James had offended him, he would be in deep trouble. 300 million. James said disinterestedly. Honey. Thea's face was pale. 300 million. Where on earth would she get that? Meanwhile, Juliana looked at James puzzledly. How could he make a $300 million bid just like that? The rich and powerful among the crowd were stunned. Although this was the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng, its maximum price was just 150 million. 300 million was overkill. Bjorn's face was contorted with rage. No one had ever dared go against a renowned man like him. Now, a young man who had come from nowhere was picking a fight with him at the auction. 300 million. Although he was a world-renowned doctor earning hundreds of thousands from a single treatment, he only had around $1 billion in his savings. 350 million. 500 million. James said nonchalantly. You. Bjorn staggered. He pointed at James and bellowed with rage. Who the hell are you, kid? Why are you going against me? James smirked. I'm just a nobody. I did say that the highest bidder can have the king of ginseng. If you want it, just raise the bid. Hearing the exorbitant price, Tia quivered in fear. She pulled at James and gestured for him to stop. However, James was undaunted. Fine, whatever. Bjorn was so enraged that he smiled. He extended his shriveled arm and pointed at James. Take it if you so desperately want it. I certainly hope this herb will extend your lifespan. He uttered in a threatening tone. Everyone could see he was enraged. James was doomed. Bjorn stopped raising the bid. Christine had been watching from behind the auction block and remained silent. However, she had secretly informed Jay, who was in Kensington. After hearing about what was happening, Jay immediately tapped into the surveillance cameras at the venue. Upon witnessing the scene, he immediately ordered, Christine, since Tia wants the 1,000-year-old ginseng, just give it to her for free. Hearing this, Christine froze. She secretly contacted him. No way. The bidding price is 500 million, Grandpa. How can we just give it for free? Listen to me. Ads by Pub Future. Alright. Christine dared not disobey his orders. Seeing that no one else made any further bids, she looked at James and said with a smile, since no one else is making a bid, this 1,000-year-old king of ginseng will belong to Mr. Caden. However, I'd like to announce that we at Herbal Biotech have decided to present it to him for free. Hearing this, the crowd was stunned. For free. The crowd fixed its gaze on James. Who was this ordinary-looking man? Why would Herbal Biotech give such a precious herb to him for free? James smiled slightly. He had expected this. He knew that it would surely attract Jay's attention if he made a bid. That was because Jay Fallon went by another identity. He was also Jake Graham, the boss of the Underground Intelligence Network. Jake knew who James was. Meanwhile, Tia was dumbfounded. For free. James looked at the dumbfounded Tia and said with a smile, Honey, how nice of Dr. Fallon. He's showing you respect by giving such a precious 1,000-year-old king of ginseng to you for free. Respect. Tia froze. James grinned. I knew this would happen. That was why I made bids despite not having any money. It was all to attract his attention. It turns out to be a resounding success. Tia was in a daze. Was Dr. Fallon showing her respect by gifting her the 1,000-year-old ginseng because of the mysterious Mr. Caden? Mr. Caden, Ems. Tia, please come backstage to obtain the ginseng after the auction. Saying that, she continued the auction. Juliana beside her was bewildered. What was going on? Why would Herbal Biotech give the precious 1,000-year-old king of ginseng to James for free even after the bidding price had reached 500 million? Could he be some big shot? Let's go, honey. We'll take the ginseng and go home. James helped Tia up and turned to leave. Seeing this, Christine called another auctioneer along and went backstage. Christine greeted respectfully, Mr. Caden, Ems. Tia, Ems. Fallon, this gift is too valuable. I can't accept it. Tia was here to turn down the gift. How could she accept such a precious herb? She did not want to owe the mysterious Mr. Caden anymore. Of course, we'll accept it, James spoke immediately. James. Tia reproached him, how could we take someone else's stuff for free? James scratched his head awkwardly and said, Honey, it'd be foolish to not accept free stuff. Christine hurriedly chimed in, Ems. Tia, this is just a token of my grandfather's regard. It's just a king of ginseng. Please accept the gift. But, no buts. James took the king of ginseng and said with a smile, Ems. Fallon, thank Drive. Fallon on our behalf. Saying that, he pulled Tia by the arm and left. James pulled Tia out of Herbal Biotech. Outside, Tia was exasperated. What are you doing, James? How could we accept such a valuable gift? Why not? It's free anyway. James was indifferent. You. Tia pouted. Then, she took a deep breath. Sigh. Never mind. Once again, she owed the mysterious Mr. Caden another favor. When she returned to Kensington, she would have to thank him in person and ask him not to look out for her anymore. Though she was just an ordinary person, she was being taken care of by such a powerful and influential man. Once or twice was fine. However, it was too flattering for this to happen all the time. After obtaining the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng, James and Tia returned to the Hill residence. On the way, they received a call from David. Where are you, Tia? Cyrus is treating us to a meal. Come, quick. Never mind. I'm not going. Come, quick. He's treating you specifically to a meal. We're at the Gastronome, the most luxurious restaurant in North Kensington. Alright, then. Thea hung up the call and looked at James. Cyrus is treating us to a meal at the Gastronome. Let's go, then. James opened the GPS. After specifying the search location, he drove toward the place. Ads by Pub Future. At the same time, Bjorn left the auction at Herbal Biotech. He was in a presidential suite at a 5-star hotel. Damn it all. His face contorted with rage. He was a renowned doctor. No matter where he went, there would always be people currying favors with him. Even though he had presented himself formally to the crowd, there was someone who paid no heed. Before him stood a respectful middle-aged man. Mr. Truman, we've looked into the background of that guy, he said. Speak. Bjorn had a murderous look. He said coldly, going against me. He must be tired of living. I'll make his life a living hell. His name's James. He comes from Kensington and is the son-in-law of the Callahans. The Callahans are an uninfluential family. Their family assets only amount to $1 billion. HMPH. Bjorn clenched his fists. How dare a son-in-law of a second-rate family act in such an insolent manner? Mr. Truman. The middle-aged man opened and shut his mouth, remaining silent. Why are you stammering? Speak. Yes, the middle-aged man said, although James is trash, his wife, Thea Callahan, is no ordinary woman. She has deep connections with powerful people. Rumor has it that it was because she saved a man 10 years ago. The middle-aged man told Bjorn everything. Was this why Herbal Biotech gave her the 1,000-year-old ginseng for free? Bjorn wore a grim expression. A mysterious Mr. Caden. Who was he? Bjorn had traveled across the world, and he had stayed in Kensington for a long time. However, he had never heard of a powerful and influential Caden. A Caden from 10 years ago. Bjorn squinted his eyes. He had never regarded the Cadens from 10 years ago as a threat, let alone a survivor 10 years later in the present. He was a renowned doctor who had connections across the world. He was acquainted with many bigwigs who would even curry favor with him. After all, the richer a man was, the more afraid he was to die. Mr. Truman, I also found out they're here in North Kensington to celebrate Thea's grandmother's birthday tomorrow. Very good. Bjorn had a frightening expression on his face. To him, James was already a dead man. The Hills, too, were doomed. James and Thea arrived at the Gastronome. They went to the 3rd floor and entered a luxurious room. Many gathered there. They were all younger generations of the Hills headed by Cyrus. At the moment, Cyrus was conversing with a 20-year-old looking man. The man was wearing a white t-shirt and a golden necklace around his neck. He was also wearing a luxury watch and was embellished with extravagant objects all over his body. The luxury watch alone was worth hundreds of thousands. He was Augustus Zenos and a friend of Cyrus. A friend, in Cyrus' eyes. To Augustus, Cyrus was a nobody. If Cyrus had not said he would introduce a beautiful lady to him, he would not even have come. Augustus, I am not lying. My cousin's strikingly beautiful. Although she's married, her husband's trash. They haven't even slept on the same bed yet. I can vouch for that, said David. It's true that my sister hasn't slept with that useless James yet. However, many wealthy men are chasing her. Do you know the Watsons? Xavier Watson is going after her too. Let's not forget the mysterious Mr. Caden. These are extremely wealthy men. They have sent us luxury cars and villas worth hundreds of millions. What David was trying to say was obvious. If you wished to pursue Thea, you had to prepare gifts equal in value to Mr. Watson's and Mr. Caden's. At that moment, the door opened. James and Thea walked in. Everyone in the room stood up. Cyrus hurriedly approached Thea and pulled her over to Augustus' side. He then introduced him to her. Thea, this is Augustus from the Zenoses. Their family is worth hundreds of billions. Upon witnessing Thea's glamour, Augustus was immediately attracted to her. He scrutinized her from head to toe. Her features were refined, her hair was long and silky, her skin was fair and delicate, her figure was curvaceous. Her entire body was alluring. Mine, mine. At that moment, his mind exclaimed. Ads by Pub Future. However, he was composed on the outside. He gently nodded. Not bad. She barely qualifies to be my girlfriend. Saying that, he patted Cyrus on the shoulder. Not bad, Cyrus. From today onward, my family will be looking out for the hills. Delighted, Cyrus hurriedly said, thank you, Augustus. He pointed at the chair and said, have a seat here, Thea. Have a few drinks with Augustus. Thea's face darkened. She came because they were her family. She did not expect Cyrus to invite a stranger and even make her accompany him for a drink. Meanwhile, James grinned at Augustus and asked, you must be Augustus Zenos. May I know who Zach and Washington Zenos are to you? Augustus glanced at James. Seeing that he was dressed in ordinary clothes, he looked at him with disdain. They're my cousins. I see. James smiled slightly. Then, he looked at Thea, honey, since Mr. Augustus has taken a liking to you, accompany him for a few drinks. It's too hot in here. I'm going out for a walk. James, Thea called out. However, James had turned to leave. Thea frowned and muttered, what the hell is he thinking? With a frustrated look, she took her seat. With the number of people, she was not worried about Augustus doing anything inappropriate to her. James walked out of the building. He lit a cigarette and pulled out his phone to call Gavin. Scared out of his wits upon receiving James' call, Gavin could not even hold his phone properly. He swiftly answered the phone. Gee General, what is it? Can I help you? James said, you have Zach's number, don't you? Give him a call and tell him I'm at the Gastronome in North Kensington. A guy from the Zenos called Augustus is demanding my wife accompany him for a drink. Let's get one thing straight. I charge an exorbitant price for this. 100 million for a glass of wine. Saying that, he hung up. Then, he returned to the room. Thea was seated beside Augustus. Generous and amicable, he opened bottles one after another and poured wine into the empty glasses. He even poured one for Thea. He lifted the glass with a bright smile. Here's to our first meeting, Thea. Cheers. Sorry, I don't drink. Just as she was declining his offer, James walked in and sat beside her. He said with a smile, honey, since Mr. Augustus has taken a liking to you, how could you refuse his offer? The Zenoses are an influential family and the representatives of North Kensington in the Five Provinces Business Alliance. There's nothing to lose from getting acquainted with him. Wearing a smug look, he said, he's right, Thea. I heard you opened a processing plant. With the Zenoses looking out for you, there's nothing for you to worry about. It would be rude of Thea to refuse further, so she lifted her glass. After that, Augustus kept pouring wine into her glass non-stop. Though Thea did not want to drink, James, as well as the rest of the hills, kept pushing her. And no more. I can't drink anymore. After a few glasses, Thea's cheeks were bright red. Thea, this is Mr. Augustus we're talking about. Stop thinking about yourself and consider the family's interest. That's right. If Mr. Augustus finds you satisfactory, you two can go and get a hotel room. With him looking out for our family, we'll be rich. The hills chimed in. Meanwhile, James leaned against a chair and remained silent. Augustus laughed. Haha, that's right. We can go and get a room after drinking. I'll be looking out for you guys in the future. We'll get rich together. He glanced at Thea. Seeing her reddened cheeks, his heart raced. Thea was on her 10th glass of wine. She had never drunk wine. After drinking so much in such a short amount of time, she felt dizzy and refused to drink any further. However, the hills were discontented. Stop acting innocent, Thea. You think we don't know anything. You are fooling around with a mysterious Mr. Caden even though you're married. If not for him looking out for you, would you have the success you enjoy today? Now that the Callahans are rich, can't you help us out? The hills uttered harsh words. What are you talking about? David stepped forward and reproached them. How is Thea responsible for helping you out? You better watch your mouth. He glanced at James. Seeing that James was sitting lazily on the chair with a disinterested look, David was enraged. He was standing by idly as his wife was being denigrated. What a piece of trash. Although David wanted a rich brother-in-law, the hills were being too abrasive. Never mind, David. Thea stood up. Now that she had given the hills face, she wanted to go home and rest. She stood up to leave. Cyrus grabbed her arm and said, What are you doing, Thea? Augustus was a Zenos. If he could curry favor with a Zenos, the hills would be rich. How could he let Thea go free? Thea yelled, What are you doing? Let go. Ads by Pub Future. Slap. Cyrus slapped Thea across her face and roared, "Stop acting innocent. Do you know who Augustus is? What's the big deal drinking a few glasses of wine and sleeping with him?" Smash. In an instant, Cyrus was sent flying. James gave him a hard kick. Cyrus flew 2 meters away. To James, his silence did not mean they got a free pass to bully Thea. He had remained silent because he wanted her to obtain more venture capital. Although he was rich, he could not just hand it to Thea. She would grow suspicious and suspect that he had gotten the money illegally. Thea did not expect James to resort to violence. She stopped him in time and said, "It's all right, honey." Only then did James sit. He looked at Thea and asked, "Can you continue drinking, honey?" "Huh?" Thea frowned. "What do you mean by that, James?" James said with a smile, "If you can still drink, continue." "What?" Thea was puzzled. At that moment, Cyrus got up. Clutching his chest, he pointed at James with a painful expression. "You F-con piece of trash. How dare you hit me? You're dead meat." Saying that, he looked at Augustus. "Augustus, you call the shots around here. Quick, call the security guards in and crush him." Augustus wore a grim expression. He stared at James coldly. "Kneel, trash." James sat on a chair and crossed his legs. Ignoring Augustus, he said, "Honey, drink as much as you can." "No way. Let's go home." Thea refused. She knew James was a good fighter. He could take down a dozen men in an instant. She did not want things to get out of control. Meanwhile, Augustus pulled out his phone and gave a call. Soon, the door opened. A dozen security guards armed with electric batons walked in. James immediately raised his hands and pleaded, Please, don't act rashly. Honey, have a few more drinks with Mr. Augustus. If you don't, I'll get beaten to death." Seeing the security guards, Thea was intimidated. She did not want James to resort to violence again. She looked at Augustus pleadingly. "Mr. Augustus, please order them to leave. I'll have a few more drinks with you." "That's the way." Augustus grinned. This was his territory, and they were his prey. He lightly waved. The security guards immediately left the room. Thea had no choice but to take her seat once more and continue drinking. Meanwhile, James wore a disinterested look. He took a cigarette out and lit it. At the same time, after receiving James' call, Gavin immediately called Zach. Hearing what had happened, he was appalled. Then, he cursed, "Damn you, Augustus. Are you trying to ruin the Xenozers?" If only he had been in North Kensington, he would have rushed over and taught Augustus a lesson. However, he was in Kensington. He could not get there in time. He called Richard Xenos, his father and the patriarch of the household. "Dad, something bad happened. That bastard Augustus is making the Black Dragon's wife accompany him for a drink. Get over there now. They're at the gastronome. The Black Dragon told us we'll have to pay 100 million for every glass of wine she drinks. We're gonna be in huge trouble if we don't reach there in time. How much we pay isn't the point. However, if we offend the Black Dragon, the Xenozers will be ruined." It really is the Black Dragon. The Black Dragon General of the Southern Plains, the behind-the-scenes owner of Transgenerational, and the one behind the destruction of the Xaviers and the death of the Great Force leaders. Back then at the House of Royals, I saw Xavier Watson kneeling before the Black Dragon with my own eyes. Richard was a representative of North Kensington in the Five Provinces Business Alliance. He had a pretty good idea about who bought Transgenerational New City. Hence, the moment he received Gavin's call, his face turned pale. "This bastard, I'll kill him." Richard stormed off to the gastronome. At the gastronome, Thea was drinking. She had drunk at least 20 glasses of wine. She could not drink any further. Seeing that the opportunity was ripe, Cyrus took out a wad of banknotes and tossed it at James. "Hey, trash, take this and enjoy yourself. Augustus will send your wife back tomorrow morning." Accepting the money, James's face remained impassive. His actions had not gone unnoticed by Thea, who was slowly losing consciousness. She was dismayed. Meanwhile, Augustus was thrilled. Would he finally get what he wanted? Watching Thea's curvaceous figure, he gulped. He could even foresee how the scene in the room with Thea would play out. Thump. At that moment, the door was kicked open. Ads by Pub Future. A 50-year-old looking man stormed in with a dozen bodyguards close behind. Beat him up. Beat the sh*t out of him. It was Richard. Augustus froze upon seeing Richard. Uncle, why are you? Ah! Before he could finish his words, a bodyguard pounced on him. He grabbed Augustus' hair and slapped him with great force. Augustus was bewildered. Thea was dumbfounded. Everyone was flabbergasted. Only James remained composed. Richard bellowed with rage, beat the sh*t out of him. The bodyguards threw Augustus on the floor and proceeded to beat him up. Ah, uncle, please stop. Augustus begged for mercy. The Hills were petrified upon witnessing the scene. Richard approached Thea and knelt before her. Then, he kowtowed non-stop, Ems. Thea, it's our fault for not teaching him well. Please have mercy on the Xenoses. Thea was in a daze. She did not know what had happened. She stood and went to help Richard up. However, she vomited the moment she stood. She vomited all over the kneeling Richard. Then, she collapsed onto a chair. Ah! Augustus cried out in agony and passed out. The Hills were horrified upon seeing this. They made their way to the sidelines and remained silent. James looked at Richard and said coldly, "A Xenos made my wife accompany him for a drink. As Thea's body is priceless, I'm afraid the price will be exorbitant. 100 million per glass. I've been counting. My wife drank around 20 glasses of wine. Give us 2 billion, and we'll let this slide." "What? Have you gone mad?" Thea, who was tipsy, immediately regained her senses. She looked at James and rebuked him. "Stop spouting nonsense, James. What do you mean by 100 million per glass? What do you mean by 2 billion? You've gone mad. We'll gladly pay." Richard dared not refute James. Zack had explained everything to him. This was the Black Dragon, the existence that stood at the top of the power pyramid. A single order from the Black Dragon could spell doom for the 5 provinces business alliance, let alone the Xenoses. Although $2 billion was a hefty sum, he would gladly pay as long as the problem could be resolved. Richard lifted his head and pleaded, "Ems. Thea, I'll pay. 2 billion, is that right? Give me your account number. I'll make the bank transfer immediately." What? Thea was bewildered. $2 billion was not a small sum. Who was this person? How was he giving up $2 billion just like that? Richard knelt on the floor, his heart pounding. "Ems. Thea, please give me your bank account number. I'm begging you. I'll make the transfer immediately." Thea was still at a loss. Why was he begging to give her money? It was just a few glasses of wine. Seeing Augustus, who had passed out on the floor, she took a deep breath. Could it be the mysterious Mr. Caden? However, they were in North Kensington, while he was in Kensington. So, how could he know what was going on here? How influential was he? Thea thought of a man, the mysterious Mr. Caden. Lots of people were in the room. However, everyone remained silent. No one dared to speak. After a moment, Thea spoke. It's no big deal. It's just a few glasses of wine. Everything's fine. $2 billion was no small sum. She would not accept such a gift." Richard glanced at James. Ads by Pub Future. Sitting on a chair, James smoked his cigarette and looked at Thea. "Honey, are you dumb? Just take it. This is $2 billion we're talking about. We won't make that much money even if we worked for decades. I heard that the Xenoses are a rich family with assets totaling hundreds of billions. They aren't short of money." "Yes," Richard hurriedly added, "we aren't lacking money. This beastard has got a lot of nerve forcing you into drinking. Your body and health are priceless. It's only natural that a single glass of wine costs 100 million. What? Thea was at a loss. James looked at the still dumbfounded David and Alyssa and shot them a look. David regained his senses and urged, "What are you standing there for, Thea? Quick, give him your account number." Saying that, he approached Richard. "Does my account work? She's my sister, after all. It's the same as transferring the money to me." Richard looked at James. James immediately reproached David. "What are you doing, David? This is Thea's money. Can we even get them back after they go into your account?" Richard was on the verge of tears. His forehead hitting the floor, he kowtowed repeatedly. "I'm begging you, Thea. Just give me your account number. I'll make the transfer immediately." Thud, thud, thud. His forehead was already bruised. P, please get up. Thea tried to help him up. Richard would not dare. Thea had no other choice but to give him her account number. Richard wasted no time and made the transfer immediately. Richard was the current patriarch of the Xenozers. As he was a VIP of the banks, his transfers would be approved in an instant, no matter the amount. Soon, Thea received the money. The process took a mere 5 minutes. It was surreal seeing the balance in her bank account. $2 billion, just like that. Thea, have you received it? Richard was still kneeling on the floor. Thea spoke monotonously, why yes. May I leave, then? Can I take this beast away? Why you may. Understood. Pardoned, Richard immediately ordered his men to carry Augustus, who was still passed out, and swiftly left the room. After they left, the Hills recollected themselves. Their gazes were fixed on Thea. They knew Thea had deep connections with very influential people in Kensington. However, they did not expect her to be this influential. Even the patriarch of the Xenozers was kneeling on the floor, begging to pay her $2 billion as compensation. Thea, did you really receive $2 billion? David cast a longing glance at Thea. And no, how could that be? Thea rolled her eyes and said, I received nothing. What do you think $2 billion is worth? Did you think he'd give it to me just like that? But Richard made the transfer while he was kneeling on the floor. Don't lie to me, Thea. I don't need your money. Even if I do, I only need 100 million. You have 2 billion, after all. What's wrong with giving me 100 million? I'm your brother.